is here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You know, I'm trying to figure out how best to address this. The government, the State Department, puts out a warning. They shut down a couple dozen embassies in the Middle East and North Africa. They even shut down our embassy in Israel, as I mentioned last week. I didn't quite understand that one, as I said, but there you go. Then they come out with a second warning. Americans anywhere in the world, traveling anywhere in the world, beware. Now, by the way, I'd be looking over my shoulder anyway, but that said, in the context of the first terrorism warning, we get that warning. And they keep saying, we don't have any specific information, but there's a lot of traffic, a lot of noise, similar to the lead up to 9/11. Okay. But we don't have any specific information. So what do we have? Let's step back and look at this. They shut down a couple of dozen embassies in the Middle East and North Africa. I'd shut them down anyway. I don't know what the hell we're doing, but okay. And I'm not an isolationist, just a realist. Then they say the whole world, be aware. This could happen anywhere, anytime, any place. Okay. But there's nothing specific. Oh, and it was supposed to happen Sunday. Now it can happen any day. So what do we know? Do we know anything? Then there are these idiots that are going on these Sunday shows claiming that the NSA data collection program was undoubtedly helpful. Undoubtedly helpful how? They're collecting data on us. They were talking about these embassies in the Middle East. While they get the numbers, there's a pattern, they can track them. Track what? Do you doubt Peter King? I think Peter King has a few loose marbles, to be perfectly honest about it. He's getting weirder and weirder as time goes on. Well, what exactly did Peter King say on ABC's This Week? And notice how he's getting attention now. Now that he attacks conservatives, now they want him on the Sunday shows. Cut 2, go.
Yes, I mean, as far as this being announced by the government, no, it's absolutely crazy to say there's any conspiracy here.
Stop. I am not saying there's a conspiracy here. By the way, I know some hosts do because that's how they get their jollies. That would be an awfully big conspiracy. So many people and the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, I mean, but it plays well. But that said, what I'm troubled by is really how little is known. And then one other aspect I'll get to in a moment. Go ahead.
Dutch has seen the intelligence. I've seen it. The government would have been totally negligent if it did not take the action it's taken. Whether or not there was any controversy over the NSA at all, all his actions would have been taken. So listen, I'm a Republican, but I'm saying the administration, I've had problems with the administration on different issues, but what they are doing now is what has to be done. They'd be derelict if they were not.
Stop. What are they doing now? Well, they shut down the embassies. Okay, but what are they actually? I don't understand. We're hollowing out the United States military. We're collecting more information on innocent American citizens than any time in our history. We will not secure our border. We're not tracking down people who overstay their visas, which is, in many respects, one of the gaps that was used to attack us on 9/11. So what exactly? What? What are they doing? Go ahead.
You can't criticize them for doing too little with Benghazi and not criticize them for doing too much. I'm giving them credit for saying they learned from Benghazi, and that's why they're firming up the embassies.
Benghazi's not an embassy. This guy is and given the new information, thanks to Jake Tapper and another reporter there at CNN, this has nothing to do with potential gun running or missile sales or whatever the hell we were doing there with our CIA operatives. So we didn't learn from Benghazi. There's nothing to do with Benghazi. And this guy's been read into whatever they know. The second point I wanted to mention. Have you ever seen so much leaking in your life? It's not even leaking. People going on TV and talking about what is said to be going on to the extent you can figure out what's going on. I haven't. It's like every member of Congress and every senator has been read into this and is running around talking about it on the record, off the record. Then the third point. If you're Al-Qaeda and all this information is publicly out there, that you're going to hit somewhere, maybe in Yemen, maybe not, on Sunday, maybe not, and so forth and so on, you're going to get enough information to do what? To regroup. To change your battle plans. It's a great piece in the American Spectator today. Let's see if I can even find it, which relates to this and so much else that's going on. I don't even know if I printed it out. And the fellow said, you know what we're missing? We're missing a leader. And not just the president, but the Republicans. And there is overlap. You look at this Obamacare stuff. You got Karl Rove running around saying this would be Pickett's charge, you know, in the Civil War Gettysburg battle. And Pickett, by the way, didn't want to make the charge, but he was ordered to make the charge, and of course his soldiers were slaughtered, charged right into the Union forces on flat ground. You know the story. And he said, this writer, I'll find it during the break, this isn't Pickett's charge. We're stuck with McClellan. These Republican leaders are McClellan. Rove is McClellan. That is, no matter what the issues are, no matter how well positioned they are, they're afraid to fight. No matter how much money they raise, whether in PACs, whether at the RNC, whether at some of their other, they're afraid to fight. They're afraid what will happen if they engage. And so they don't. And I look at it on this national security front. You got Pete King running around with diarrhea in the mouth, rambling on about stuff. It's not even coherent what he's saying. We can't criticize the president for not doing enough at Benghazi and then doing plenty. What does one have to do with the other? We don't even know what they were doing at Benghazi now. Although there are some ideas, more and more ideas. So this whatever's going on, folks, this is about as poorly handled as any time I can remember. All kinds of general information being thrown out there by every politician in Washington, D.C., and repeated verbatim by the media. Really no specific information, even though they're throwing out all kinds of information. And I haven't even played you some of the clips of politicians insisting that the NSA program, this is why we need it, it's helpful, not even realizing how stupid they sound because we're talking about, at least initially, the Middle East, North Africa. In other words, threats coming from abroad, not from your neighbor, at least not yet. And even then, if it was a threat from your neighbor, you can get it lawfully and constitutionally without collecting 1 trillion pieces of data every single day. So I read this as you do. I listen to this as you do. I try and take it all in as you do. And what do you have? Absolute confusion. This concerns me. Doesn't make me feel better. And, of course, was it Saturday or Sunday, Mr. Producer, the president was playing golf? Or was it both days? sure he had his meeting. He doesn't seem all that concerned about it. He's having another event over at the White House tonight. Anyway, that's my take. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, something's been bothering me. And there's really no good time to discuss this. I could wait to another day, I could wait, but I don't want to wait. But something's been bothering me. Okay, don't get in trouble, Marco. Let's see how we can discuss this. You know, folks, I'm very blessed to be behind this microphone, just as I was blessed to serve in the Reagan administration for 8 years, just as I am blessed to be able to write books and have a wonderful family and so forth. But here's what I want to tell you. I am not the savior of the conservative movement, and neither is anybody else. I am not the savior of talk radio, and neither is anybody else. I am not the savior of the country, and neither is anybody else. You are. You are all these things. And it's true. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because as I do interviews that will be made available next week about my book, I get a question. It's a typical question, and it's very interesting to me that it's repeated. Am I the leader of the opposition? Am I the leader of the constitutional conservatives? Now, I could sit here like some and go on and on and on that I am, but I'm not. None of us are. We're blessed to have this platform. I am blessed to have this platform. I work very, very hard every day. And I work very hard to please our affiliates and our other platforms, satellite radio and so forth. And I'm very appreciative of all of them. But I don't pretend, nor would I ever, that I'm the center of the universe, because I'm not. And I kind of hinted to this last week during my favorite movie, Patton, which I've seen 40 or 50 times, where he says in that long speech, among other things, glory is fleeting. Glory is fleeting. What glory somebody like me has at all. I'm addressing this for a reason. It'll become clear in a moment. I live a very basic life. I don't run to Hollywood. I don't have big events. I don't go out to big social events. I never have. I never will. It's not me. I prefer to be around family and a few friends and my dog Barney. And in some ways, it's pretty mundane. I enjoy reading a lot, and I enjoy scholarship because that's what I do. But I'm not saying I'm not unique at what I do and so forth. What I'm saying is that it is a mistake for people who are in my business or on TV or what have you to be claiming some leadership role. They're no more leaders than any other person who is self-appointed. I view myself as somebody who is trying to contribute to the preservation of this nation, to the restoration of our republic. Like so many of you do in your own lives and your own ways. Whether it's at your workplace, whether it's at the dinner table, you're the ones who are important. You're the ones who are spreading the word. Millions and millions of you. And so, Mr. Producer, I want to give you a direction on the air in front of all these people. If you find that I start doing this I stuff, I want you to whisper in my ear, unless it's, beating my chest about it, and tell me to cut it out.
Sounds good.
Because I do everything I can to avoid that. That's not to say I won't say, I bring these constitutional issues to the table. I've done this on the book. I get that. But to claim to be something I'm not, that I won't do. Because it's you who make all this possible. You. And I feel the need to say this because I hear too much of this crap. I really do. I'll even talk about this business I'm in. Conservative talk. There are a lot of great men and women in conservative talk. Nationally, syndicated, and local. And many of them don't get their due. Many of them don't get their due. There's a lot of jackasses, too, but I'm not talking about them. There's a lot of jackasses everywhere. And in this business, it attracts some very lousy people who broadcast and so forth. But it also attracts some very, very good people. And I think it demoralizes them, it dispirits them, if they're dismissed as wannabes or what have you. Well, Mark, you use backbencher. I do, and I use that, and it's aimed at certain specific people who I choose not to name. For their sake, not mine, because I have a heart. But I just wanted to mention this, and I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. I'll be right back.
Levin, the most passionate conservative on radio. Talk with him now at 877-381-3811.
I'm looking at our audio list here, and you guys have put together a good list. Isn't it pathetic, all these Republicans on the weekend? You should see what all these idiots are saying. And by the way, you know what they're going to be doing now? While they're home, they're going to be campaigning as anti-Washington politicians. I think what's annoying and frustrating all of us is what fools these politicians take you and me for, particularly in the Republican Party for Republicans. What fools they take us for. I've been watching our friend Paul all over TV. I'm thinking, if this is conservatism, I don't know what it is. And I've spent my entire life studying. That's another thing. I have not been a broadcaster my entire life. I had a life before broadcasting. And so I think it's helpful to bring these other experiences to the table. Other experiences serving in senior positions in the Reagan administration. So I can compare what's going on at the NSA today with what we saw when I was in the Reagan administration. Or I can compare what goes on at Benghazi to Iran-Contra and so forth. Or I can compare leadership to the lack of leadership. Because I was there, I experienced it. So it's good to bring a wealth of different backgrounds and information to the microphone. I am not a career broadcaster, although it's my career right now. I have to work hard at it. But I'm looking at the audio sound bites we have here, and it would depress you. So I'm not going to play them, of these Republicans, of Lindsey Graham and so forth, and Saxby Chambliss. How the hell did this guy ever get elected? How the hell did Saxby Chambliss get elected from Georgia? If he's not mush, then there is no mush. It's just incredible. And then they're going to campaign all August as anti-Washington Republicans. How are they anti-Washington? What have they done that's anti-Washington? Nothing. And it's interesting, because my new book, and by the way, this I'm very excited about, comes out Monday, officially Tuesday. On Monday, I will be talking about it at length, getting into the amendments. I will also be on, what am I on Monday? The first two segments of the Sean Hannity TV show. The next day, Tuesday, I'm on the first segment or two of the Neil Cavuto show. I don't do a lot of media, so. Then there's going to be a special program on it as well. But let me just warn you. The Republican establishment will be just as angry about this as anybody else. Because my aim here is to start or to breathe life into a completely new way of approaching this. Whether it succeeds or not, I cannot control, because I'm not king of America. But at least from a substantive and intellectual point of view, to start the ball rolling, hopefully. You know who I got a nice note from the other day? You're going to be stunned, Mr. Producer. Who sent a friend of mine a nice note about me. Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck. I think it's long overdue. Long overdue that Glenn Beck and I do what we can in our own roles to help save the country and restore the republic. It was a class act, absolute class act. So I just wanted to say that publicly. See, because we're all in this together. We really are. And but we have to find a way forward. And I think I found one. It's right there in the Constitution, and this is what I want to talk about, and I want to promote the idea and get you folks talking about it and reading about it and thinking about it and promoting it too. I'm very juiced about this. Maybe I'm the only one. I don't know. But I look at what fifth-rate politicians we have today. It's just, I mean, there are a few great leaders, but they pounce on them. They trounce them every chance they get. I want to play this clip of Peter King one more time, not so much because of the terrorism issue or the embassy issue or the NSA issue. I want you to listen to the rambling, the incoherence, the inability to put sentences together. This guy's on the Sunday shows because he's attacking Rand Paul and Ted Cruz. That's why he's on the Sunday shows. Otherwise, nobody gives a damn about him. When he was holding hearings about Muslim terrorism and so forth, he was a pariah. Now they embrace him. But just listen to this. Cut 2, go.
Yes, I mean, as far as this being announced by the government, no, it's absolutely crazy to say there's any conspiracy here. I mean, Dutch has seen the intelligence. I've seen it. The government would have been totally negligent if it did not take the action it's taken. Whether or not there was any controversy over the NSA at all, all his actions would have been taken. So listen, I'm a Republican, but I'm saying the administration, I've had problems with the administration on different issues, but what they are doing now is what has to be done. They'd be derelict if they were not. And, we can't criticize them for doing too little with Benghazi and not criticize them for doing too much. I'm giving them credit for saying they learned from Benghazi, and that's why they're firming up the embassies.
What? No, but he's on ABC's This Week because he's supporting the administration. Whatever the administration's doing, it's not at all clear to anybody except they're leaking general information. So I got to do one more. Don't be mad at me. I need to amend what I said. I got to play one more. Here's cut 4, Mr. Perdue. Here's Lindsey Graham. I mean, I promise. This is it. These two. Cut 4. Go.
I'm going to keep being a social and fiscal conservative that focuses on our national security, takes care of our interests at home, like the Port of Charleston, working with my state officials, and be a conservative like Ronald Reagan, who will sit down with a Tip O'Neill to solve Americans' problems. I'm conservative, but I do want to solve problems.
Yeah, because, you see, conservatives don't want to solve problems. And he wants to sit down like Ronald Reagan with Tip O'Neill. Well, the problem is he's not Ronald Reagan. Well, he is a Ronald Reagan. He's Ron Reagan Jr. I don't know about the ballerina part, but he's Ron Reagan Jr. Senator Graham, I mean, there are many different aspects of conservatism, but I don't see where you fit in any of them, to be perfectly honest with you, in all due respect. See, folks, this is what I've had enough of. Rambling marble mouths like Pete King, phonies like Lindsey Graham. Do you really think these people are capable of reforming themselves? Do you really think these people are capable of reforming Washington? How so? When? Where? I don't see it. Or the Saxby Chambliss? I'm not going to play his audio because, believe me, you'll throw up your dinner. Can't defund. I've said it many times, and let me say it now. If these Republicans were around during the Civil War, I don't think they would have supported it. I think they would have demanded that we sue for peace. It's easy to say today you're against slavery. We had to fight a civil war to end slavery. And there were all kinds of politicians at the time coming up with compromises, trying to cut deals, trying to divide the country, the territories, the newly acquired territories, old territories in the West versus, and all these deals, they were just going on and on and on. And don't you see Lindsey Graham? I mean, seriously, project him into that, trying to cut deals and everything. Karl Rove, well, be suicide for Republicans to take a firm stand. This is what I mean. We praise great men and women because they do great things. Not because they're great compromisers or negotiators. We praise them because they do great things. Ronald Reagan walked away from the table when Gorbachev was prepared to zero out nuclear arms. He said, no, I want my strategic defense initiative. Because he also wanted to defeat the Soviet Union, and he was told by his advisors up and down the chain, you can't do it, it won't happen. But he's a great president because he did those things he was said he couldn't do. Same with Lincoln. Same with so many of them. Can you imagine these Republicans any time in our past when everything was at stake? I honestly can't. So today, what's at stake? Our entire financial system, our economic system. If that collapses, the whole society collapses, and the government on top of it. These men don't even have the will to fight Obamacare, and they keep saying the same thing, and I have to keep addressing it. Well, you're not going to defund the entitlement part, just the discretionary part. Well, let's address that for a second. The discretionary part, ladies and gentlemen, is the implementing part, like with the state exchanges. So you certainly can cripple it. But even more than that, as Senator Cruz said on this program, and others have said, so pass legislation defunding it. The idea that something is passed and Congress can't do anything about it or try to do anything about it is absurd. And I'll give you the example. They have voted, 40, 50, 5,000 times in the House to repeal Obamacare. Well, why don't they pass an appropriations bill that defunds it totally? Totally. And put language in there that does that. Because then it has teeth. Then it pushes up against the continuing resolution fight or the debt ceiling fight. And they've already surrendered, like McClellan. I'm not going to fight that battle. They've already told Obama, we're not going to fight that battle. So you know what battle they want to fight? They want to fight to hold the ground that was already taken. Little piece of ground on the sequester. Not much, just this little tiny piece. And, of course, Obama even won that because he punishes what? The military. So their idea of a fight is to hold this little ground. So we have massive yearly deficits as far as the eye can see. Obamacare is fully implemented. And that's their idea of victory. That's not victory. That's defeat. We're currently in an economic rut. Unemployment rates are still high and growth is sluggish. The economy's sketchy at best. And I'm quite certain Obamacare isn't going to make things any better. Now, are you going to be prepared if our economy collapses under the weight of government debt and inflation? Well, with gold and silver at 2-year lows, now's the time to consider diversifying your portfolio with a tangible asset that has survived economic catastrophes. With Goldline's two-way price guarantee program, if the price of your qualifying purchase drops, you can call Goldline to replace it at the lower price. If the price of your qualifying purchase goes up, you can buy more at the original price. Either way, Goldline has you covered. So call Goldline today, the only precious metals company I trust, to learn more about how you can qualify to receive this limited time special. Also for a limited time, when you call Goldline for its free investor kit, mention that I, Mark Levin, sent you. Goldline will include a free commemorative medal, with Ben Franklin on one side and Independence Hall on the other. And I promise you, that's not going to last forever. And you'll also get the free investor kit. So if you're interested, call Goldline right now at 1-877-365-2646. Read Goldline's important risk information to see if buying precious metals is right for you. 1-877-365-2646. 1-877-365-COIN. That's 1-877-365-COIN.
Mark Levin.
Kathleen, Long Island, New York, the great WABC. Go.
Hey, Mark, listen, you don't have to explain to us that you're so humble because it's obvious. Because not only do you tell us the news that you rant about your Raisinets and the UFC and the NFL and all that good stuff, but that's not why I call.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I live in Long Island, and Peter King's been around forever, and I think being in there so long is what makes these Republicans crazy. And just over the weekend, Charlie Rangel was just praising Peter King, and Schumer was praising Peter King, so that goes to show that he has to go. Understand my point?
I do, because I think these guys, they've been beaten and whipped so badly over the years and put down that when the people who've done it to them start praising them, I think that has a psychological effect on them.
He was like Mr. Long Island Congressman. He's not my congressman. Mine's like 50 times worse. And he's been around forever, and everybody loved him. So the only thing I could think of is I think he's just snapped.
Well, no, I'll be honest with you. It started about, when the hurricane came.
Uh-huh.
And some of these Republicans were saying, look, I'm not opposed to helping out our fellow citizens, obviously, but this thing is so loaded with pork, and it did half of it, like $25 billion of it, had nothing to do with the hurricane relief. And so they wanted to stop it and clean it out, and he just flipped out along with Chris Christie because obviously the constituents needed help. But the point is, well, what are you flipping out at the conservatives who are trying to get you the help but don't want to spend all the rest of this? And he had no rationality whatsoever. And he's been after these guys ever since. And, he almost sounds like a punk anymore.
Yeah, and now he's hanging out with Schumer and Rangel, which goes to show he's like, in my book, he's like McCain and Graham and all of them, and it's disgusting. It makes me sick.
All right, my friend, you take care. Hope you'll join us at book review on August 17th, Saturday. Teresa, Springfield, Missouri, the great KSGF. Go.
I just want to know where Hell No Boehner is now. I watched him, as that was being voted on in the House, and I thought he did a great job.
Obamacare.
But now, where's his passion? Why are people not being reminded of the bribery that it took to get this bill passed in the first place? Speaking of pork, as you did with your last caller, that bill should have never been passed. If earmarks had been addressed, like McCain wanted to, that was one thing I agreed with McCain on in the 2008
Oh,
election.
big deal. Earmarks, it's like talking about chewing gum when your house is burning down. You understand what I'm saying? Earmarks amount to maybe $40-50 billion a year out of and even less than that, actually, maybe $25 billion a year out of a $4 trillion budget. So they always want us to look at the shiny object. Okay, great, we'll deal with earmarks. Now, what are they going to do about Obamacare? It's nothing to do with earmarks.
It would have never been passed without the pork.
Oh, that jerk was going to vote for it no matter what. They just gave him a fan to dance with, that's all. But anyway, Teresa, thank you for your call. I'd take the earmarks if they cut the entitlements, but, it doesn't really work that way. Earmarks are a minuscule, tiny, tiny part of the budget. I'm not for them. I'm just saying, of course McCain talks about that, while he also, is cutting his deals for these massive government programs. I'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Boy, that A-Rod's a real a-hole, isn't he? I mean, good Lord. And by the way, this is like the new Zimmerman trial issue. It leads on the news. I'm not talking about it, other than what I just said. I'm Mark Levin. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. I think all these guys that use this steroid crap and the rest of it should be banned for life. I think they're screwing up these sports. And not only that, they're making it hard to really look back and compare, past generations of sports with this current one. I mean, it's just, they're paid more than ever before. And this is not intended as a blanket condemnation. Paid more than ever before and more reckless in terms of what they're doing. Like, I don't mean drinking and eating hot dogs and so forth. I mean doing things that are illegal to try and improve their competitiveness. It's just so bad, Anyway, back to this. By the way, did you see the Washington Compost was bought by Amazon? What's his name? Bezos, whatever his name is, for $250 million. I remember when that company was worth billions. May I say, and I don't mean to be rude, I am thrilled that paper's going into the crapper, because that's where it belongs. More leaking, ladies and gentlemen, on this intelligence stuff. I'm going to tell you about it because there's no way to hide it. Reuters has it, AP has it, everybody has it, except apparently the news at the top of the hour, ABC, because I didn't hear them mention it. Reuters intercepted communications in which Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri ordered the leader of the affiliate in Yemen to carry out an attack as early as last Sunday, prompted the United States to close diplomatic missions in the Middle East and Africa, the New York Times reported today. And the intercepted conversations were between Zawahiri, who succeeded bin Laden, and Nasser, whatever. I am not going to pronounce all these names. Too damn many consonants or too many damn vowels? What the hell? Or as I like to say, yabba dabba doo. The head of the Yemen-based Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in the newspaper said, the New York Times said it initially withheld the identities of the Al-Qaeda leaders at the request of senior U.S. intelligence officials, but reported them after the names were disclosed Sunday by McClatchy newspapers. I've never seen an administration that leaks like this. They go after this guy Snowden, right? Okay. But look at this. So, that's the information. Now, I want to help out my friend Dana Perino and my friend Greg Gutfeld on the 5. I get to watch a little bit of this as I'm prepping for my show. We're really, really big defenders of big government surveillance. No offense, they just are. This little bit of information demonstrates unequivocally that the NSA collection of all those phone numbers and patterns and all the rest have absolutely nothing to do with this. This is a contact between Ayman al-Zawahiri and the other yabba dabba doo. So that would be somewhere in Pakistan or Afghanistan, or wherever the hell this guy is, to somewhere in Yemen. And I doubt they were using an American phone or anything of the sort in this country to communicate with each other. Got that, Pete King? Got that, everybody else? The more we know in every one of these cases, the more we know that this NSA data grab is really unacceptable. And one last time, it's not one last time, I guess I'll have to keep saying it, one more time, this data already exists in the private sector with phone companies, and it exists with server companies. Now, it may not exist in a way that is, patterned out the way people want and so forth and so on, but that's what we have these other branches of government for, and checks and balances. If the communication was intercepted between these two Islamo-terrorists overseas, and they had made a communication with somebody in the United States or some group, then, as has been our practice and has been upheld and is constitutional, yes, you would intercept that communication. And if you felt you needed a warrant after the fact, the law provides for a warrant after the fact. And in this case, I don't even think you need a warrant. But this is not, you see, folks, this is not this massive collection of your phone information. Now, one other point in this regard, in the New York Slimes, the National Security Agency's dominant role as the nation's spy warehouse has spurred frequent tensions and turf fights with other federal intelligence agencies that want to use its surveillance tools for their own investigations, officials say. Agencies working to curb drug trafficking, cyber attacks, money laundering, counterfeiting, even copyright infringement complain their attempts to exploit the security agency's vast resources have often been turned down because their own investigations are not considered a high enough priority, current and former government officials say. Intelligence officials say they've been careful to limit the use of these security agencies' troves of data and eavesdropping spyware for fear they could be misused in ways that violate America's privacy rights. That would be America's constitutional rights. So again, I would ask my two friends on the 5 and elsewhere, what do you think of this? And this is the problem. The framers of the Constitution would think this is about as scary as it gets. The information being collected like this, and now other agencies slobbering all over themselves to get access to it. Well, Mark, the NSA has said no today. But the information's in the private sector with these other companies that actually own it. And if they wanted it, they'd have to go through a process to get it. The recent disclosures of agency activities by its former contractor Snowden have led to widespread, okay, that we don't need. It's a very common complaint about NSA, said Timothy Edgar, a former senior intel official at the White House, They collect all this information, but it's difficult for other agencies to get access to what they want. First of all, why is the National Security Agency? Let me just ask a first principle question. Why are they collecting domestic information? That was never to happen. We have an FBI that does that, a DEA that does that, other federal agencies that do that sort of thing. They can share information with the NSA, but that's not what's happening here. The NSA on its own is stockpiling data that doesn't even belong to the NSA. Smaller intelligence units within the DEA, the Secret Service, the Pentagon, and Department of Homeland Security have sometimes been given access to the security agency's surveillance tools for particular cases, but more often their requests have been rejected because of the links to terrorism or foreign intelligence, usually required by law or policy, are considered tenuous. So now we know that we have other agencies clamoring for this information, even though they know there is no connection with foreign, that is, alien issues. At the drug agency, the DEA, for example, officials complained they were blocked from using the security agency's surveillance tools for several drug trafficking cases in Latin America, which they said might be connected to financing terrorist groups in the Middle East and elsewhere. At Homeland Security, officials have repeatedly sought to use the information that they have on the Internet and telephone databases and other sources to trace cyber attacks on American targets that are believed to have stemmed from China, Russia, Eastern Europe, and so forth. They've often been rebuffed. So why don't they get the information from private telephone companies and server companies? This is mind-boggling to me, really perplexing. The information exists. There are ways to get to it. I think they want shortcuts. That's why. And then here's this one from Reuters. A secretive U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration unit is funneling information from intelligence intercepts, wiretaps, informants, and a massive database of telephone records to authorities across the nation to help them launch criminal investigations of Americans. Although these cases rarely involve national security issues, documents reviewed by Reuters show law enforcement agencies have been directed to conceal how such investigations truly begin, not only from defense lawyers, but also sometimes from prosecutors and judges. The undated documents show federal agents are trained to recreate the investigative trail to effectively cover up where the information originated, a practice that some experts say violates a defendant's constitutional right to a fair trial. If defendants don't know how an investigation began, they cannot know how to ask to review potential sources of exculpatory evidence, information that could reveal entrapment, mistakes, or biased witnesses. Special Operations Division. That's outrageous, said Tampa Attorney James Feldman, vice chairman of the Criminal Justice Section of the American Bar Association. In fact, it strikes me as indefensible. Lawrence Lustberg, a New Jersey defense lawyer, said any systematic government effort to conceal the circumstances under which cases begin would not only be alarming but pretty blatantly unconstitutional. What the hell's going on in this government? What is going on? And under Obama, and under Holder, and under their appointees, I don't know, folks. I've never seen anything like this. And I'm telling you, I used to serve in a very high position, several of them, one in particular related to this. This is very, very scary stuff. And people who claim to be Republicans and conservatives and libertarians who just matter-of-factly defend it, they really have no idea. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I hate to tell you, Mr. Producer, I hate that damn song. Because it reminds me of, what's-his-face? You know, who was it that was doing that dance? Mr. Scientology. You're not going to help me, are you? Yeah. Yeah, Tom Cruise. Can't stand him or that. So anyway. All right, let's see here. John, Colorado City, Texas, Sirius Satellite. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mark. Yourself?
Very well, thank you, my friend.
Well, you have laid out a great case about the NSA and how the government should and should not collect data. What I can't get my congressman to answer since this whole story broke is when it changed. I supported him when he voted for the Patriot Act. I have no problems with gathering data about U.S. citizens who are in contact with terrorists. But
right.
Who and when did the policy get changed, and who do we hold responsible? He refuses to answer me.
And when did this policy change?
I can't get an answer from him. I don't know if it happened during the Obama administration, the Bush administration. They won't tell me who's responsible, if the NSA did it, if it was a presidential executive order. I get nothing out of my congressman. So I've turned to my Senator Ted Cruz, and they're working on it for me.
All right, that's the man. Thank you. Maybe the morning schmo, Joe Scarborough, will tell us over there at MSLSD when all this started. Maybe we won't. Maybe he won't. Adam, Atlanta, Georgia, Sirius Satellite. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Mr. Levin?
All right, sir.
Now, I don't condone what the NSA is doing at all. It's wrong. Sorry, a little nervous. It's about data retention policy. And to be able to conduct investigations and do what you need to do on some of these people, you need to be able to hold on to the data. And the large corporations aren't doing this. They're holding on 90, 120 days. Maybe, if you're lucky, you'll get a year.
Well, that's easy to fix. That's easy to fix, other than nationalizing all the information. It's like lawyers in certain states, depending on the states and depending on the nature of the case, have to keep files for a certain period of time.
Correct. If there's a discovery issue that locks those files into place, then they have to hold them.
No, but I'm saying that's an easy fix legislatively, if that's the deal. I mean, rather than the NSA grabbing it all.
That's going to come out of cost on the company.
Well, we all pay in the end. Who do you think pays for the NSA?
True. But it's going to come out of the cost of the companies.
In fact, I wonder how much those facilities in Utah cost.
Oh.
A lot. The other thing is, I don't want the government having all this information at its fingertips. I want them to be able to access it quickly if they need to, giving a basic reason, which isn't even that big of a hurdle, but I don't want them having it and playing with it.
No, they shouldn't have it, and they shouldn't be playing with it.
But they do have it.
Procedures. Well, yes, they do.
And Snowden obviously did play with it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
everybody knew this was going on. Wired dropped them like 3 years ago about this whole build-out.
Well, see that?
And then at that time, everybody was wondering if they really were watching the data. They really were looking for the data in itself. And nobody could answer that question at that time, but they were talking.
Well, let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. You got these people at the IRS using data there that people are required to submit for political purposes. That's been going on since before FDR. We see this sort of thing going on in department after department. The Environmental Protection Agency had gathered proprietary information on farmers and so forth and released massive amounts of that. I mean, it's not like it's not going to happen. It happens all the time.
Right. It's inherently wrong.
All right, my friend. God bless us. I hope he does. What does everybody want to call about Pete King for? Because I mentioned him, I guess. Michael, Columbia, South Carolina, the great WISW. How are you? By the way, your Senator Graham said he's a conservative like Ronald Reagan. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm really glad he clarified that. I really wasn't sure.
Hold on. Let's slow down. You're speaking too closely to the mouthpiece. Just move it away a little bit. All right, go ahead.
Okay. No, I'm really glad he clarified that because I was really unsure after so many times I've been reminding myself.
I'll tell you what, we're going to have to call you back because it sounds like you're talking out of a car wash or something. Let's get Michael's number. I say he's like Ron Reagan Jr. maybe. Not in the ballerina mode. I'm not trying to do that. No. But in the philosophy mode, I would say. All right, we'll be right back.
If you've got a telephone and you know how to use it, call Mark Levin at 877-381-3811.
Ernest, Dallas, Texas, the great WBAP. Go.
Yes, Mark. I think it's all about power. I've got a lot of friends I go to cocktail parties with or after-work functions, and they don't understand why I'm upset about the NSA. And I simply ask them, what if you ever ran for election or any kind of office? What kind of things in your past may be perfectly legal that you would not want everybody to know about that you did on your phone or your computer or anything that was electronic? And they're stumped when I say that. And it starts to sink in. And I said, it's all about power. Why do you think they're building a huge database to do all this stuff with?
You know what's amazing, Ernest, is how quiet the left is in all this. The left, which went absolutely nuts when we were merely intercepting communications from terrorists to terrorists, outside the country, inside the country to outside the country. It is amazing to me how quiet they are.
Yes, sir. All
right, Ernest.
They don't see themselves, they see themselves inside things. And the first thing they tell me is, well, do you have something to hide? And I say, well, it's not necessarily that I have anything to hide.
Well, listen, that is so stupid. But, I mean, we've addressed this for weeks. My only point is this. The left is totalitarian. Their only complaint is that when this stuff goes on, that they're the ones in power. That's all.
Correct.
All right. Thank you for your call, my friend. The left is totalitarian. Just look at everything they support. They could give a damn about separation of powers or federalism or any of this other stuff. And that mindset is throughout Washington, D.C., and that's what we're going to attack in the days ahead. Let's see, Michael, Columbia, South Carolina, WISW. Let's see if we can hear you now.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that. I was duly scolded by Mr. Producer.
All right, what's up, bro?
Off my phone.
All right.
I don't have to talk about Peter King. I mean, that's something you already touched on, and
All right, we're going to move along. I honestly don't know what's going on with this caller. We don't have to talk about Peter King when you were scolded. I mean, nobody cares. Ryan, McAllister, Oklahoma, the Mark Levin app. How are you?
I'm great, Mark. How are you doing?
All right, sir. Thank you.
I'm just excited to get to talk to you. I started listening to you in college, and I've been listening to you every night. My wife and I sit down and listen to your show, and I'm just honored to get to talk to you here.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad you have the Mark Levin app. You should all get the Mark Levin app. So if you can't get your local station or satellite or whatever one day, you just turn to the Mark Levin app. Is that not cool or what, Ryan?
That's right. You go with me wherever I go, Mark.
Oh, all right.
I wanted to tell you, I called my senator last week. I'm from Oklahoma, Tom Coburn, and I get to talking to his staffer, and this goes along with the point that you've made so many times. I asked him why he's not willing to defund Obamacare, and they explained to me that, well, Ted Cruz is going around misleading Republicans. And I said, how so? And they said, well, we can't defund Obamacare. That just can't happen. I said, well, if everybody believed like Coburn did, you're right. But, I mean, it's just amazing. She tries to give me the runaround that Ted Cruz is misleading people, that it can't actually happen. And then I hear Ted Cruz on your show explain exactly how it can happen. And, I mean, that's why I just can't wait for your book to come out, because I agree with you 100% that this has got to be – people have got to call, and we have got – I'm sorry.
You agree with me that we have to take another course. We have to look at the Constitution and take another course, and the Constitution provides another course, and whether we succeed or fail, it has to be tried like generations before us who fought for this country. We're not even talking about fighting in the traditional sense. We're talking about fighting politically, fighting strategically here, because I don't see any other way, do you? I mean, here's Coburn, who's supposed to be Mr. Deficit Hawk, and his office, and he sound like buffoons.
Oh, exactly, and that's what I tell him on the phone. I said, he's supposed to be the guy. You act like you're the guy who wants to cut spending, and you're going to let Obamacare go through? And they said, well, he's not really going to let it go through. I said, yes, he is. But like you said.
Well, hold on. Not only is he already has. Have they made any effort when the spending bill, on the fiscal cliff to attach it to that? No. Did they make any effort when we came to the debt ceiling? No. Oh, we can't shut down the government. Oh, we can't do this. Oh, we can't do that. You know, they are not prepared to fight. They're not prepared to stand and fight. And then they have this cheerleader crowd, mostly former Bush administration officials or neocons or others who are out there doing the same exact thing. Oh, this would be suicidal. Oh, this is Pickett's charge. Oh, this, thinking, no wonder we can't get anywhere. And it's time to back up and look at a new strategy. At least that's my view.
I agree 100%, Mark. And I know you are humble, and like you started the show off talking about that. You don't want to take credit for the movement, but I just want to tell you, for me and for millions of us listening, you have been such an inspiration. I just got through rereading Ameritopia. I'm ready for your new book to come out. I've got it pre-ordered. I'm telling you, the night I get it, I'm going to read it that night. I told my wife, I'm going to sit down and read it that first night. If it wasn't for you, to inspire us, to give us the tools to fight this fight. I don't know, Mark. I'm just thankful you're out there fighting it. I'm just very appreciative of you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. God bless you, man. Now, an interesting thing. One of two things will happen with this book. With my own colleagues, they'll either ignore it the way they tried to ignore Ameritopia because they don't want to talk about me or that, or they want to talk about something else, or they'll attack it. But, folks, listen, people can talk all they want. This is called talk radio. Maybe I should change this show, Talk and Activism Radio. Because, I mean, how many days can we go on and on and on talking about what is fairly obvious, the decline of America? Not because of anything we're doing, but because of what the government's imposing on us. A friend of mine wrote a piece, and he's a dear friend of mine, and he said, what's all this doomsaying? He wrote it a month or so ago. He said, America always survived. We survived, look at the Revolutionary War, look at the Civil War, look at World War II. For God's sakes, look at this, look at this. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about a military victory over America. We're talking about hollowing out ourselves. We're talking about what Obama talks about, fundamental transformation. He cheers it. We detest it. So while it's important to talk about it, and I pick up these news stories, and we're going to do that, isn't it time to relate it to something? Isn't it time to do something more? I think it is. Now, I can talk about, meatballs or this, that, or the other. I understand this is what the consultants want. They want us to turn this into non-conservative talk, just gibberish talk. I choose not to participate, which is why I think you listen. And not only that, I'm not going to just read you the headlines. Come in, I've got this here, this, and this pile. That. I'm not going to just do that. So we've come a long way, you and I, on this program. A long way. You have made the Constitution the most crucial issue in this country when people never talked about the Constitution. They barely talked about the founding. If they talked about it, it was very, very superficial. You've done this because of your listenership, quite frankly. If I didn't have listeners, I didn't have ratings, I didn't have revenue on this program, believe me, nobody would care. But you've done this. Talking about conservatism and originalism and constitutionalism. This wasn't done 20, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. And now we're going to talk about something else. And not just philosophy, which is important on this program. We've talked about Plato. We've talked about Thomas More. I can go on and on and on. The great philosophers, the not-so-great philosophers. Locke, Montesquieu, Hobbes, Marx, Engels, and many, many more. This sort of stuff wasn't talked about before. Now we talk about it. But now we need to link this to something. We need to find a way through this. And folks, It's not going to be immediate. So don't read the book and say, well, look at that. I mean, what the hell? What do you mean, what the hell? We have to fight. Organize. And there are groups already organizing, by the way. They are organizing. They have been organizing. And I want to highlight some of them. There are ways to do this. None of it's easy. It just isn't. But why surrender? This is inevitable. You know, and it's also one thing for people to say, but I have hope for this country down the road. I have hope for that. Well, good. Great. Now, what are you going to do about it? Just have hope? Even in this business. I have hope, you know, we're America. Okay, great. I'm glad you have hope. Now what? Well, that's what we're going to try to address. I said we. Notice? All of us. Paul, Madison, Alabama, the great WVNN. Go.
Hello, Mark.
Yes, sir.
I am a computer programmer.
Yeah.
I saw in 2003 the request for proposal from the NSA. My company wanted to bid on it. I wouldn't bid on it because it was such a violation of the U.S. Constitution. I suffered unemployment as a result of this. The software proposals requests were not secret. I know what's in the.
What were they requesting, sir? What were they requesting?
They were requesting to have every single bit of every phone call transcribed, translated if necessary, collated. Every electronic transmission, including emails, bank transmissions, you name it, they were going to get 100% of it. They were going to run bots against it for live analysis and threat evaluation.
Well, sir, you know what that explains? That explains why all the ex-Bush officials all over TV and radio are strongly defending this. Because you're telling me this idea was hatched in the administration of George W. Bush. Is that what you're telling me?
Absolutely.
Well, then that explains it. That explains Rove. It explains the moderate Republicans. It explains a couple of people on the fire. These other just cheerleading this, cheerleading it, because they know then that they hatched this idea.
And you got to understand, in 2003, I knew it was that big of a violation of the Constitution to do it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's a very important call there, Paul. I appreciate it. Madison, Alabama, the great WVNN. Well, there you go. Now you know why Republicans are supporting this blindly, almost ideologically. Not all of them, but the usual suspects. You know, the most alarming danger to your freedom is the inability to defend how important it is. Freedom is under attack every day in the war of ideas. So how can you best defend your liberty? By using your voice to convince others about what's right. We have to learn how to speak up, become an advocate for the principles of liberty that made America the greatest nation on earth. Senator Ted Cruz eloquently defended our freedom in a wonderfully inspiring speech delivered at Hillsdale College's commencement. You should read it and analyze it and study it. Get access to the speech today for free by subscribing to Imprimis, Hillsdale's speech digest dedicated to promoting civil and religious liberty. And you, my beloved audience, you can read this speech right now by signing up at levinforhillsdale.com. That's Levin for Hillsdale.com. Learn from this powerful speech. And by signing up, you'll receive many more great issues in the future. All for free. I love reading Imprimis every month, and you will too. Sign up today at levinforhillsdale.com. Reading the words of gifted orators will help you better defend freedom. Your voice can help save this nation. levinforhillsdale.com.
Mark Levin.
Next hour, the bottom of next hour, folks. Have a special guest. Some of you are going to be quite concerned. Mark, who is it? What's the subject? Give me the field. Nope. Some of you will be quite concerned. You shouldn't be quite concerned. That's the most I can tell you. Bottom of the next hour, you're going to want to hear it. And should be extremely interesting. Maybe the folks at Mediaite or Real Clear Politics, that our buddy at the Right Scoop, I don't know. We'll see. Or over at Daily Caller or Breitbart. We'll see if they're interested. Should be very interesting, though. Stephen, Gainesville, Florida, on the Internet. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thank you for taking my call. I got a quick question for you, a constitutional question in regards to the way that the electors...
Stop 1 second. How many shows do you think people can call and ask serious, substantive, constitutional questions?
Truthfully, you're the only person I wanted to ask this question to.
All right. What do you got?
Okay. It's my understanding the Constitution directs the state legislatures to discretion how the electors are divvied up in their state. And right now, as you've well articulated over your years on the radio, the statists have taken over Washington and have grown the federal government. Why don't the states? I live in Florida. We have a great, conservative state. Why don't the states say, you know what, the state legislatures are going to elect the electors. We're not going to let the citizens of our state do it anymore.
Why not the state? Because they'd be thrown out of office, that's why.
Well, I'm saying in conservative areas. I mean, people just like me that live in this conservative state, and we hate seeing Florida swing the way it's been swinging. I think it would make people more focused on state and local issues. I mean, instead of knowing who your congressman is or your...
Well, here's the thing. You're talking about the Electoral College. While the electors can be chosen in the fashion that you mentioned, the fact is that the electors, for the most part, reflect the popular vote in the state, correct?
Yeah, but the state, in my understanding, the state outlines who are the electors and who can be elected as an elector.
But I'm saying, what difference does that make, really?
Well, I mean, in one case, we're not going to get the rhinos out. I mean, that's obvious. But at least it's a plug.
But the Electoral College, are you talking about the Electoral College?
Yes, I am. Because
but hold on, let me just say, the Electoral College, you're right. And from time to time, you'll see the electors, they'll go a different direction because they're not required to reflect the popular vote. But for the most part, they have. And I'm saying, why does it matter if they're Ernie Grabotsky or Nancy Smith, say the Republican electors, because they're going to mostly wind up doing exactly the same thing?
Now, I don't want to sit around the TV watching each county come in with their results of, Joe Schmo and dead Joe Schmo coming in and voting. I want to sit in front of my TV on the election day, National Election Day, and watch my state legislature vote for the president. And whoever, the majority...
No, but I'm asking you about the outcome. I'm not trying to be difficult. How would the outcome change?
Well, I think in states that are more conservative on...
The way it works is the popular vote comes in, a particular state is said to go one way or the other, and they assign the Electoral College votes to the Republican or the Democrat candidate for president, or some percentage to a third-party candidate. Then later, they have a meeting of these electors, and they sit down and they vote. These are mostly honorary positions, not particularly, substantive in any way. And that's really the extent of the state legislature, appointing these people to carry out the popular vote. So I don't think it had much of a change.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, everybody. Mark Levin here. Hour 3, our Power Hour. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. We're posting my book signing appearances, 3 of them, on my social sites. It's on my website. We're going to announce our 4th one tomorrow. In fact, we're going to announce tomorrow when I will be at the Reagan Library. Please do not call them because actually that hasn't been revealed to them yet. I know it, and the executive director of the library, my dear friend John Highbush, he knows it. So we will be announcing it. Those of you who are listening now, some of you are listening on KBC tape delayed. You're going to want to find, I suppose, another forum, another way to listen to the program. Because what time are we announcing it tomorrow, Mr. Producer? 7:30. 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. We'll be announcing that event. And so we'll have the 4, August 17th, Saturday, at Book Review, Long Island. August 18, Bookends, Ridgewood, New Jersey. August 24th, Tyson's Corner, Barnes & Noble, Virginia. And then the Reagan Library. I'm flirting with, although I doubt I'm going to do it, doing one more in southern Florida. Flirting with it. Mark, why not here? Why not there? Well, because I want to do the radio show, too. And if I'm doing 40 cities, it's not going to be possible. So we shall see. And my parents are down there, and I don't know. Maybe one or both would be able to show up. I don't know. I'm thinking about that. But we'll see. And as you will notice, those of you who have attended book signings before, I do take the time to meet everybody. Can't have a long conversation, or the person at the end of the line is never going to finish. But I do take the time to say hello to everybody. And not because I'm some great person, but because I figure if you're going to show up and take the time to get to the place and purchase a book for me to sign, then that's the least I can do. And I'm extremely appreciative. Have you ever heard of third-hand smoke? Have you guys ever heard of third-hand smoke, Mr. Producer, Mr. Call Screener? Have you? No? Well, there is something called third-hand smoke. This from the Huffington Compost. We know first-hand smoke is bad. We know second-hand smoke is also bad. But now researchers have found that third-hand smoke, the surface-clinging residue left over from second-hand smoke, can also cause damage to our DNA. I'm only getting into this not because it's distracting, but because here comes the next wave of government coercion. This is the very first study to find that third-hand smoke is mutagenic. Study researcher Lara Gundel, a scientist at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, said in a statement, tobacco-specific nitrosamines, some of the chemical compounds in third-hand smoke, are among the most potent carcinogens there are. Now, if that's what you get from third-hand smoke, imagine about fourth-hand smoke. They stay on surfaces, and when those surfaces are clothing or carpets, the danger to children is especially serious. The study, published in the journal Mutagenesis. You subscribe to that, Mr. Producer? Mutagenesis? Do you know how to spell that? Anyway, I won't put you on the spot. Doesn't just show that third-hand smoke can harm cells. It also shows that the harm it can cause could become worse with time. Kind of like global warming. I mean climate change. Well, you know what I mean. Researchers put paper strips in chambers with smoke. One chamber exposed the paper strips to the equivalent amount of smoke and chemicals that come from smoking 5 cigarettes in 20 minutes. Do people smoke 5 cigarettes in 20 minutes? The other chamber exposed the paper strips to cigarette smoke for a total of 258 hours, as well as ventilated air for 35 hours, spread out over 196 days. I'm already confused, but so what? The researchers found higher concentrations of the toxic compounds in cigarette smoke on the strips of paper that were chronically exposed to smoke compared with the strips of paper acutely exposed to the smoke. Do you understand the difference? No. Then researchers took the compounds from the paper and exposed them to human cells in a culture of a full 24 hours. They found that the third-hand smoke led to oxidative DNA damage as well as DNA strand breaks. What kind of bullcrap is this? So now we have third-hand smoke. So the whole goal here is going to be to prevent all smoking and round up offenders. I mean, what HuffPost Green. I guess that's an offshoot of the Huffington Post, which, as we know, is red, a.k.a. commie. HuffPost Green reported in 2011 about Indiana University Health's decision to change its policy on employee smoking during the workday because of third-hand smoke. Instead of smoking off campus during the workday, they are not allowed to smoke at all because the chemicals from the cigarette smoke still clings to their clothing and bodies. Well, we have something called washing machines, and we can take something called showers. I despise the smoke on my clothes and on my furniture, so just clean up. So all smoking is banned. Instead of smoking off campus during the workday, they are not allowed to smoke at all because the chemicals from the cigarette smoke still clings to their clothing and bodies. This is just more evidence of what we've talked about many times, which is, folks, and I've written about it too, the left is never satisfied until we're all working together, side by side, bare feet, collecting rice in some swampland. And even then, our baskets will be examined just to make sure everybody's doing their exact share. Radical egalitarianism. You see, we can never be equal in the sense that the left means. And we can never be controlled enough. So now we'll have national health care, and it'll be, well, you're not allowed to smoke at all, or you don't get coverage. Or you can't do this, or you can't do that. It's just endless. Seattle, Washington, we have a great affiliate there, KVI. And brothers and sisters in KVI country, we just re-signed there. So we're there for a long time. It's a great radio station, KVI. We want to salute all the people who work there. Fox News, government workers in the city of Seattle have been advised that the terms citizen and brown bag are potentially offensive and may no longer be used in official documents and discussions. Now, why would citizen be offensive unless you're pandering to non-citizens? And why would brown bag be offensive? Brown bag your lunch? The city's Office of Civil Rights instructed city workers in a recent internal memo to avoid using the words because some may find them offensive. Hey, I find you offensive, so why don't you ban yourselves? You notice that, ladies and gentlemen? Liberals never ban liberal stuff. They only ban normal stuff. For a lot of particularly African-American community members, says this guy Brownstein, Elliot Brownstein of the Office for Civil Rights, the phrase brown bag does bring up associations with the past when a brown bag was actually used, I understand, to determine if people's skin color was light enough to allow... What the hell are they talking about? To allow admission to an event or to come into a party that was being held in a private home. The guy says this is his understanding, so he doesn't even have an actual understanding. But brown bag, black people, therefore, what are they talking about? According to the memo, city employees should use the terms lunch and learn or sack lunch instead of brown bag. Lunch and learn. Brownstein said the word citizen should be avoided because many people who live in the Seattle area are not residents, are not citizens. Oh, okay. I love the city of Seattle. It's the politicians I hate there. They're just absolutely out of their friggin' minds, as they are in most metropolitan areas. They're there mostly in the rest of the country, for that matter. Here's an interesting one. The great Commonwealth of Virginia. By the way, this scuzzball, Terry McAuliffe, have you ever seen a bigger sleaze in your life? First, he makes this fortune, which nobody can really explain, with a minimal investment. Then he's touting his job-producing skills when, in fact, he was producing jobs in China. Now they have an SEC investigation going on and because of misleading reports and so forth. And some billionaire who's an environmental nut job in California said, you know what, we want McAuliffe for governor of Virginia. Spend whatever you have to. I cannot believe my beloved Virginia. It's not a woman, it's a state. I cannot believe my beloved Virginia would elect this sleazeball. And yet it's possible. All right, that wasn't my point. By the way, have you noticed the idiot from Maryland? Oh, dummy, who's all but destroyed that state? Now he wants to run for president. Oh, really? Nobody knew. Anyway, Associated depressed. Firearm sales in Virginia are increasing while gun-related violent crimes are declining. Wait a minute. Let me repeat that. Firearm sales in Virginia are increasing while gun-related violent crimes are declining. Federally licensed gun dealer sales show that firearm sales rose 16% in 2012 to a record 490,119 guns purchased. You know, Mr. Producer, 490,119 of those minor 4 firearms. And I've just gotten started. I've got what they call, Mr. Producer, what is it, a semi-automatic weapon? When you pull the trigger, the bullets keep coming out? Did I tell you I got that? And new, and these are big bullets. I got it last weekend, 2 weekends ago. 223s. No, I didn't know what 223s are. You know what 223s are, Mr. Producer? Big damn bullets. That's what they are. And I bought I just want Cuomo to know and all the rest of them to know, I bought a magazine that takes 30 rounds. 30 rounds. You know, I may mention this. When I drive from Virginia, I have to go through Maryland to say, see family in Pennsylvania or go to New Jersey or whatever. I'm talking on my cell phone. You know, it's in my hand against my ear and my mouth, and I'm talking. And then when I drive over the Potomac, I have to hit the speaker on it and put it in my lap. It's like going from a free state to a non-free state. But anyway. So anyway, the sales of firearms rose 16% in 2012 to almost 500,000 purchased. During the same period, the number of major crimes committed with firearms dropped 5% to 4,378. So Chicago, Illinois, 60601, you really should be paying attention to this. Because in your city, really only the criminals have guns because law-abiding Americans aren't allowed to have guns. In any event, the answer is simple. The good guys should arm themselves, and the bad guys will be nervous. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
What do you need 4 weapons for? It's an excellent point. I think I need 24 weapons. Let's see here. How about Donnie, Alexandria, Virginia, the great WMAL. Go.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Quick question for you. I hope you can help me out. I'm really disappointed and upset with some of my favorite conservative representatives, like especially Paul Ryan, who I thought was so amazing during the Obamacare debate. So when he held up that 200 or 2,000-page bill and just claimed how ridiculous it was.
Right.
And now he's trying to sell a 2,000-page immigration reform. And I just wonder, what's he going to say? You know, say it passes tomorrow, and a year from now or 2 years from now, the president decides just to ignore or delay or defer the pieces that he doesn't like, just like he's doing now with Obamacare. What's Paul Ryan going to say to me, somebody who was such just an admirer? I just don't understand why our representatives can't see how they're being led down this path.
Well, here's the thing, Donnie. Paul Ryan's not being led down this path. Paul Ryan is pulling the rest of us down this path. If you see what he's been saying, and apparently for a long, long time I wasn't aware of it, and the alliances he's building with the most radical elements, Paul Ryan is not being misled. He's doing the misleading, in my humble opinion.
I agree, but I just don't understand the motivation.
Well, you got to get over it. You're just going to have to say, okay, he's on. I check him off the list if he runs for president.
I guess so, but how do we stop them? How do we stop them from doing this?
I've written a whole book. It's coming out next week.
I know, but
I don't know that we can stop a sitting representative from doing this. I mean, he's elected and so forth, but I just feel like the problem is bigger than one election. It's bigger than a handful of politicians. It's just something that has to be addressed in a fundamental way. They talk about fundamental transformation, and I'm talking about fundamental preservation.
And I do have one idea, one suggestion. I think one of the biggest problem is education, and it's an education in the form of the citizens of this country understanding how damaging these policies are. And I think that the only thing the Republicans are doing today is softening the blow and making it a little bit easier, and they're just making this debt grow faster and faster, but it's in a way that isn't really harmful. And well, I feel like
you mean it's in a way that's not that's not understood as being harmful. All right, Donnie, thank you for your call, my friend. Well, that's what I try and do behind the microphone here every single day, is to counter what these Republicans are doing and to obviously try and confront what the Democrats are doing. So, I mean, I don't know what else to do other than that. And then my little manifesto here comes out next week. I don't know what to do other than that, but we're going to keep pressing our case. I mean, we don't surrender on the Mark Levin Show. This is our Liberty Project. The Liberty Project. That's what we decided to call it. Are you with me or not? I'll be right back.
Some people talk about the Tea Party. We are the Tea Party. Call in now. 877-381-3811.
It's been a little while, but with us on the program, the third hour, the Power Hour, Senator Marco Rubio. How are you, sir?
I'm well, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. You sound a little glum. You all right?
No, I'm not. I'm doing well. Just obviously concerned about the news and national security issues and all of that, but I appreciate the chance to come on the air with you.
Well, let's talk about that. We know what we're not going to talk about, the I word. I'm just not in the mood for that. All right. Let's talk about national security. One of the things that concerns me, Senator, quite frankly, is how much information's on the public record. And, by the way, we have even more information tonight on the public record about the actual communication. They're saying from, what is his name, Zakawi, to some other name I can't pronounce, the guy in Yemen, his operative.
Well, look, the Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, as it's called, which basically, when they talk about that, they're talking about the Yemeni branch, continues to be very dangerous. And interesting, you know, a couple, I don't know when it was, maybe 8 weeks ago, the president gave a speech where he said all wars must come to an end, and so must this one. Apparently no one's told that to Al-Qaeda, who continues to view themselves at war not just with the United States, but with the West. And, recent developments highlight that. This is still a very dangerous world. We are still involved in a war on radical Islamic terrorism. You know, obviously, despite the president's effort to close Guantanamo, despite the fact that George Bush is no longer president, all the reasons he used to say why we were having trouble in that part of the world, we still have trouble in that part of the world because these are radical, violent, hateful elements who continue to want to kill Americans wherever they can get their chance. And so this is a reminder of that. And we should take it very seriously, and I'm glad authorities are.
And I'm glad they are, too, but all this leaking on the public record, there's an awful lot of it out there.
Yeah, that's concerning. And it's concerning not because the American public doesn't deserve to know. Clearly, there's an imminent threat to the country, whether here or abroad. People should know that so they can take precautions. I know some of the problems in the past is that when these issues came up, they warned diplomats not to travel, but they didn't tell the American public that. On the other hand, I am concerned that with all this talking going on, we're giving away some of this information that could very well have, be giving away the message by which we acquired it, or even perhaps impeding the ability to catch these guys or to get them before they get us. So I am concerned about that. It's a fine line, but there's a lot of information out there that I think perhaps has gone beyond what you hope intelligence folks would be out there sharing.
Don't you think it's odd that I know the president had a meeting on Saturday about this, but then he goes and he plays golf? I mean, isn't that weird? I mean, it's weird to me.
Well, maybe he had a phone in the golf cart. I don't know. Look, all I can tell you about it is that this is a very serious issue. I have no reason to think they're not taking it seriously, but I think the part that we really have to look at is the president's rhetoric on this issue. He won't even call it a war on terror, and I have a problem with that because it is. We need to have that mentality that in fact this is in battle that we're engaged in. It's going to last a little while. These guys are not going out of business. They've reconfigured themselves and reconstituted themselves in different ways, and they continue to be a very serious threat to our way of life in the long term. I mean, these are radical crazies who are looking for ways to kill innocents. And they see that as a way to further their agenda. And we should not be in any way deluded into thinking otherwise. And I fear that this administration sometimes, in the rhetoric that they use, makes it sound like this thing is over. It's not over.
And yet, Senator Rubio, you look at our military spending, how it's really being slashed in terms of its effectiveness, and the Army, by the time they're done, is going to be at its smallest number since before World War II. Why are we doing this?
Well, I can tell you two things. Number one, I cannot imagine a time in our history where our Navy has not been more important. You look at some of the territorial threats that we face with regards to the South China Sea and the shipping lanes that make trade available and possible. It's the U.S. Navy that has guaranteed the freedom of the seas now since the end of World War II. And you've seen that slashed. But look, here's why it's happening. It's pretty simple. This administration and the Democratic Party refuses to entertain anything having to do with entitlement reform. Those programs, as they are currently structured, are bankrupting themselves, will ultimately bankrupt the country. They refuse to change them in any meaningful way, and as a result, all the reductions in spending have to come from the discretionary part of the budget, of which defense spending is a significant part of it. At a time, by the way, when our potential adversaries in China and in Russia, and when Al-Qaeda and other terrorist elements continue to either expand their reach or continue to reconstitute and plot against us. It's actually reminiscent of the late 1970s. When Jimmy Carter basically eviscerated our national security power.
But, the problem is the next president who comes in, assuming it's not of the same mindset, look at all the problems they're going to have to deal with. They're going to have to deal with a massive debt, massive yearly deficits. They're going to have to deal with a very sick economy. And they're going to have to rebuild our military. Reagan had to do all this, too, but we're so deep in the hole right now, it's just going to be much harder.
It's going to be harder for two reasons. One, because the debt is over, approximating $17 trillion. It'll be higher than that by the time this president's done in 3.5 years. You compound that with all these changes that have gone on in the global economy, which is a challenge to begin with, and then you add to that this additional entitlement of Obamacare that's been put in place. When that thing starts to kick in, I mean, we've never seen a program like that. Not even Jimmy Carter expanded government to that level, the way Obamacare will do. And that's why I've been, so engaged in trying to defund it and stop it here in September when we get back. Because I honestly believe that once this thing starts taking root, it's going to be very, very difficult to undo some of these things. Some of the harm could potentially be irreparable.
What happens to senior citizens when this thing kicks in, by the way?
Well, let me give you one example. One of the reasons why I've become so increasingly passionate about this issue. Florida, my home state, has a lot of senior citizens. There's a program called Medicare Advantage. It's one of the few choice programs out there available to seniors. You basically sign up, and a private insurance company manages your care. And in order to compete for your business, they have all kinds of value-added stuff, maybe transportation, but the outcomes are good. The outcomes under Medicare Advantage are very good. They've had really good outcomes because the patients have control over their health care, and there's an incentive to keep them healthy. That is going to be hurt badly. $11 billion this year alone will be taken out of that program. So come October of this year, senior citizens on Medicare Advantage, my mom being one of them, will get a benefits letter from their company, and it will basically outline the things they used to get that they will no longer get under their Medicare Advantage program. That's just one example. We could spend 3 hours on this program talking about all the impacts that Obamacare is going to have on the working class, on the middle class, on small businesses, but on seniors with regards to Medicare Advantage. This takes hundreds of billions of dollars out of Medicare Advantage, not to save Medicare, but to fund this new entitlement called Obamacare.
And I'm told Medicare providers are not allowed to tell patients what the cause of this is, that it's Obamacare. Is that true?
That's correct.
Do you know?
That's right. There's a gag order in place. They're not even allowed to talk to them about it right now. What they're allowed to do come October, whenever they send out their benefit letter, is basically explain to seniors, here's your new benefit package. Compared to what you used to get, you'll no longer get transportation. You'll have a higher co-payment. You'll have more out-of-pocket expenses. And at that point, obviously, you know what the playbook is, right? The Obama administration will turn around and say, well, that's the greedy insurance companies. And that's because HHS has issued basically a gag order. But the fact of the matter is that it is directly related to Obamacare. Another thing is some of these companies are going to drop out of the Medicare Advantage business, which means less competition. Maybe seniors have an existing doctor that knows their case history and they're comfortable with that doctor. They may not be able to continue to see that doctor if they get thrown onto another company or they lose Medicare Advantage. I mean, it is an epic disaster from every perspective, not just in the Medicare part, but all the impact it's having to our economy right now.
So why can't we get more Republican senators to join you and Mike Lee and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and a handful of others?
I'm not sure the answer to that. I really don't. I mean, I think there's a question about whether we can be successful on it, and people think maybe tactically it's not the best approach. But let me stop you there. If you thought when you decided to run for the Senate in the Republican primary, the way these Republicans think when it comes to every damn battle they're involved in, you never would have run. Yeah, and here's what I would add to that. There has to be some issue at which we say, look, and this is the issue where we draw the line. I mean, we understand about all these other things, but there's an issue where you got to draw a line in the sand and say, this is it. I mean, on this issue, we're willing to fight no matter what the consequences, politically or otherwise. If that issue is not Obamacare, I can't understand what issue it would be. And that's the point I've tried to make. Of all the issues out there, if there is one issue that I think we should be willing to go to the limit on, this is it. I mean, you look at the impact this thing's going to have beginning October 1st on every aspect of our economy. I mean, there literally is no aspect of our economy that's not negatively impacted by Obamacare. And if that's not an issue we're willing to fight to the end on, I just don't know if there is such an issue that we'd be willing to do that on.
Well, what do you say to the Republican establishment that says, well, look, all you can do is cut discretionary spending. You can't actually stop the entitlement itself?
Well, a couple things. First of all, the House can pass a bill that attached to the short-term budget is a bill to defund Obamacare. They can do that. Now, the Senate, obviously, because of its Democratic leadership, would block it. But then the onus is on them. They're now the ones threatening to shut down the government. That's the point that's not been made enough. So what the president is basically saying is he is willing to shut down the government if it does not fund Obamacare. That is an unreasonable position. And that's the position that the president and the Democrats have taken with regards to this issue. But I would add to that the following. We can defund we can defund the exchanges. We can defund the IRS agents to enforce the law. By the way, the same IRS agents whose union is asking to be exempted from Obamacare. They're in charge of enforcing the law, but they're being asked to be exempted from it. So there are things that we can do. There are pretty significant things that we can do if we want to do it. And unfortunately, as of right now, we don't have enough people willing to do it. I hope that will change here in the month of August.
But if the Republicans aren't going to stand for this, I don't know what they're going to stand for. But what's their argument going to be? We're going to hold the ground we have when it comes to the CR and the debt ceiling?
Well, that's part of the problem, right? I mean, and so you look at the short-term budget, and I think what some are saying is what we're going to insist on is the same budget levels that were agreed to in the Budget Control Act. So what you're basically saying is that our ask in return for the short-term budget is to basically keep what's already in place. And I'm not sure that's a good strategy. But beyond that, I would say, how can you, look, I'm not attacking anyone directly. All I'm saying is you cannot say that you are against Obamacare if you're willing to vote for a law that funds it. If you're willing to fund this thing, you can't possibly say you're against it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you and a handful of you are up against the Republican establishment. You're up against the media. You're up against the Republican establishment cheerleading media. I just want you to know most of the people in my audience agree with you. So keep that in mind, too.
The thing that's going to be out there, this is unreasonable. They're threatening to shut down the government. We are not threatening to shut down the government. We are fully prepared, despite the fact that we are not fans of short-term budgets. We are fully prepared to support one so long as it does not fund Obamacare, because it's a disaster. This is no longer an ideological thing, right? So our opposition is that we know this is bad for the country and it expands government beyond where it should be. But at this point, it is hurting real people, people that I have met, people who have insurance that they're happy with, that they're going to lose it, small businesses that are not going to hire people or are going to move people to part-time work. And so at this point in time, I mean, all we're saying is Let's not fund that. Let's fund the rest of the government, but let's not fund that. And what the Democrats are saying, what the president is saying, is they are willing to shut down the government unless it funds Obamacare. And I think that is a completely unreasonable position, and one that when it's outlined to the American people, they're not going to support. They're not going to support shutting down the government because it doesn't fund Obamacare. And that's what the president is threatening to do.
Well, we don't have a lot of time, but what really bothers me about this, too, is you're on the side of the American people. The American people, all walks of life, all backgrounds, they don't like it, and they're going to like it less. And why can't conservatives and Republicans stand up as being the anti-Obamacare party?
You know who is going to hurt the most is the working class. Imagine now someone out there listening to this program who works 35, 40 hours a week, is barely getting by, and when Obamacare kicks in, their employer will have probably the incentive, but certainly perhaps the necessity to reduce their hours to get out from underneath the mandate that this law puts in place. This is going to eviscerate the people that are working class, middle class folks who really cannot afford to lose a single cent more in their paycheck, and Obamacare is going to cost them that. Not to mention their existing health care, the doctor they have now. I mean, no part of this is working out well. And we certainly shouldn't sit back, and we certainly should not sit back and let the president pick and choose which parts of Obamacare go into effect.
Well, we're out of time, but I want to tell you something. This is the Marco Rubio my audience loves. I know what you're going to say. I'm just telling you, this is the one. All right?
Well, good. I mean, that's what look, at the end of the day, Mark, I mean, what I told people about Obamacare is I understand the ideological arguments behind it, but over the last month and a half, I can't tell you how many real people I've come face-to-face with, including people who voted for Obama, who are just panicked by what this is going to do to them as they're finding out about it. My heart breaks for these people. It is not their fault that this is happening to them, and we've got to do something. We can't let this thing go in.
All right. Well, God bless. Thank you very much, and keep fighting on this. We'll back you up.
We will. Thank you.
All right. Take care. You agree with me, Mr. Producer? This is what we want to hear. This is the fighter that I remember. Right there. Right there. LifeLock. Florida authorities announced an arrest in an identity theft case where the victim's personal information was compromised and used to obtain credit cards and loans. Now, a search warrant was executed at the suspect's home where investigators believe that over 60 personal identities appear to have been compromised and assumed for victimization. The man may have had access to personal information through a job as a DJ and his previous employments with various telemarketing companies. I bring you these examples every day, all the time, because you need to know that identity thieves are shrewd. They're targeting you and your checking and savings accounts, and they're after your cash, and they're after your retirement. Now, you may say that's going to happen to somebody else. That somebody else is you. Identity theft has become such a serious and complex crime. You simply can't fight it alone. So I trust LifeLock Ultimate to help protect my identity and my parents' identity, my bank accounts, my parents' bank accounts from takeover fraud. LifeLock cannot protect you or your bank accounts, though, if you're not a member. So please visit lifelock.com/Levin, that's /LEVIN for details, and get my special 10% discount. Or just call and use the promo code Levin, and you'll also get the 10% discount. Here's the number, 1-800-457-LOCK, 1-800-457-LOCK. That's 1-800-457-LOCK. Network does not cover all transactions, and scope may vary.
Mark Levin.
By the way, a quick shout-out to my friend Mark Schenkman. Thank you for your very, very nice note. I just saw it. I appreciate it. And let's see. Can we slip in one more call here? I think we can. Patrick, Las Vegas on the Internet. Go.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I'm glad that you mentioned that you have movements going on in states about your new book coming out.
Well, I don't have them. Other groups. There are groups that are positioning themselves and beginning to develop strategies.
Well, that's good because you always say, what about the blue states? These defeatist Republicans, they're always asking, what about the blue states? Yeah. Well, I have an answer here. 24 states have some sort of the initiative process, which allows voters with a simple majority, 50% plus one, to basically pass a law. And we could probably use this process here to bypass the state legislatures in blue states altogether and make them rubber stamp what we tell them to do. And then secondly, 16 states allow the governor to call a special session. So we can get someone like a Scott Walker in a blue state to call a special session.
Well, you know what? We're running out of time, but you're very thoughtful. I'm not sure I agree with all this, but we can discuss it more in the days ahead. But I have to say I was a little disappointed in Walker. He's been bad on this amnesty issue. He's been bad on the defunding Obamacare issue. So I'm really kind of stunned by that. You know, we're going to take them as they come and do our best to sort things out as we move into the next election. But we're going to have to do more than that, which is the whole point here. Ladies and gentlemen, we salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, and emergency personnel. America, right here, same place, same time, tomorrow. I'm Mark Levin.